On today's episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we're going to discuss the 4-3 win over the Pittsburgh Penguins on the road on the second night of a back-to-back where the Florida Panthers, after a big win over Buffalo, they come on the second end of a back-to-back in their third and final game of their season series against Pittsburgh. We bring in Jake Winans on this Winans Wednesday to discuss this win over the Pittsburgh Penguins. So keep it right here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome to this Wednesday, March 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from PantherParkway.com. You can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. You could also follow the national show Locked On NHL and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark. We'll be covering all the regular season activities around the National Hockey League. So, Cats fans, the Florida Panthers have done it again. They would now win their fifth straight game on the road, their fourth game now in a row. And the Panthers are just clicking on all cylinders, especially on the power play. We're going to discuss that on today's episode. But let me bring in our guest co-host of the show, Jacob Winans, to discuss about this 4-3 win over the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, Jacob, welcome to the show once again.
Thanks for having me. It's always nice to be on after a win. Definitely brings the mood up a little bit.
Absolutely, man. And we were talking about pre-recording how we were overall feeling, and we were just feeling really good, both smiles on our faces and all that. So great to hear that we're both in a very great mood. But before we talk about this game, let's talk a little bit about some of the injury updates for the Florida Panthers and some roster moves for the Cats. Anton Lundell is still day-to-day with that lower body injury after sustaining that injury coming right out of the penalty box in their game against the Buffalo Sabres. Didn't return. Was never expecting Lundell to play in this one. And Maxim Mammon comes in, provides some great energy. What do you think of the situation when you first heard that Lundell wasn't playing and the energy that Maxim Mammon brought tonight after not playing the last few games?
Yeah, so with Lundell out, I mean, it's tough to see that for him, especially after he had a huge game against Detroit. Still like in the heat of the Calder race for him. So tough to see him go down, but obviously the updates were all relatively positive. It's day to day, nothing serious. So it just becomes a matter of plug someone in the short term and hope you get similar results. So yeah, I don't think anyone expected Lundell to play tonight, but Mammon definitely stepped in and produced. He got on the score sheet with an assist, and yeah, he created chances. He was fast, hard on pucks. He played his game, sliding right into the top line. So as far as replacing Lundell in the short term, it was encouraging.
And I kind of like how when it comes to roster shakeups, putting things in a blender. And of course, when that happens mid-game for Andrew Burnett, something that I talked about on yesterday's episode, of course, you have to do a lot of mixing and matching because you're running 11 skaters at that time. But just the fact that Maxim Mammon's been able to be inserted back to the top line, provide that energy. Mason Marchment, just the chemistry between Sam Reinhart and Mason Marchment has not gone away when Mason Marchment has been upgraded to the top line. He gets inserted back to that third line, and the chemistry is like right back between the two. And I mean, let's be honest, Sam Reinhart is on any other team, he's a top 6 player, and he's doing this on a bottom 6 role. Mason Marchment just continues to just bring that energy. Of course, sometimes Mason Marchment can have a little bit of a dumb penalty here and there. But I mean, even without contributing on the scoreboard tonight, didn't get any points. that combination of Mason Marchment and Sam Reinhart just brings so much balance into the lineup when an injury like a Lundell happens, and it's just great to see for this team.
Yeah, you really touched on it with Marchment. He's kind of the Swiss Army knife on the roster. He can play anywhere up and down the lines and fill whatever role you ask of him. So being on the top line the past few games, producing there, and then with the Lundell injury, slide him down to the third line. He doesn't miss a beat. He plays his game. It doesn't matter what line he's on, who his line mates are. He's so reliable in what he does. You just see him show that same skill set on every line. And like you said, his chemistry with Sam Reinhart has been one of the biggest surprises of the year. I don't think anyone really penciled him in as a point per game player, but playing with Reinhart, he's really developed a strong chemistry that gives us a good mixing and match combo to use in the playoffs. You can put that line together, and when come playoff time, you have to have at least one line going every shift, and that's one that we can kind of turn to.
Mm-hmm. And also to put in there that with the fact that a lot of players can play both center and wing, with Etu and Achari being on the same line, one on the wing, you were able to upgrade one, and it didn't mess up the lines too much in for tonight's game. So that is one great thing of the embarrassment of riches, and this is with having two players on injured reserve in Ryan Lomberg and Joe Thornton right now. So you talked about Swiss Army knife for Mason Marchment, but I want to talk about that first goal by Sam Reinhart. Enters the zone, cuts the Pittsburgh D like Swiss cheese, and then the puck bats in the air and he like swings it in. It's like Little League baseball when the coach just tosses the ball into the air and hits ground balls. It was pretty much kind of like that, and except this is hockey. So just an incredible skating by Sam Reinhart overall in that to get the first goal of the game.
Yeah, that was highlight reel stuff. That's the kind of skill you can't teach. That hand-eye coordination is something you either just kind of have or you don't. And to be the way that goal looked, it was so unexpected. You could even hear the shock in Goldie's call. No one really saw that one coming. He was surrounded by three defensemen and three Penguins there, and somehow manages to choke up on the stick and bat that out of the air. For a second, we thought it might have been a high stick, and I think Tristan Jarry did too. But no, that was perfect hand-eye coordination and skating and having his skating legs under him, and to be able to pull that off in midair, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, you see Tristan Jarry lifting the glove up
Yeah.
for the high stick, and nope, not to no avail. And that was a goal that was unassisted for to make it 1-0. I talked a lot about how Barkov, the impact that he has on this game is just everybody is just puck watching. I mean, with the skill that Barkov has, lots of eyes are on him, and then he feeds Ekblad on the centering pass, and Maxim Mammon won't get an assist on this one, but you got to give credit to him having a screen in the mid slot, and then Aaron Ekblad getting that goal to make it 2-0 at the time. And this has been a weird season series between the Panthers and the Penguins. With the exception of the second game, both teams have had multiple 2-goal leads and then not be able to hang on in that. But it's just not, and Ekblad has been a huge part of this season series. Just an incredible second goal, and Maxim Mammon getting a lot of credit for making the screen right in front of Jarry. What did you think of that one?
Yeah, so first thing I want to credit is Aaron Ekblad just getting the puck to the net. It's something that he's very underrated in. He's probably one of the best in the league at just he kind of has a seeing eye shot. It always seems to find its way to the net, not always to the back of the net, but it always gets there. And then Mammon setting the screen there in front of the goalie. That's how you score this time of year. That's how you score in the playoffs. You have to create havoc in the crease, and Ekblad just smartly gets that on goal, and it happens to go in. But yeah, there's a lot to look at on that play, and Barkov drawing all the attention, and Ekblad just getting it on goal. But yeah, full credit to Mammon standing in front of the goalie. it's a tough way to make a living when you're that guy in the crease and you're setting the screens and pucks can hit you, and it's a tough way to make a living. Just ask Patrick Hornquist, but Mammon did it very well there.
And now that's Aaron Ekblad's 50th point of the season, only the 5th defenseman in Florida Panthers history to reach that mark. So incredible feat for Aaron Ekblad. And it's crazy. He's now in his 8th. I believe it's season number 8 for the Panthers, and just the contribution that he's providing for this Florida Panthers team. But we're going to discuss more of this game in the next segment on this episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Built Bar. And this is the time of year where I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking with my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with incredible flavors. All Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate. Yes, Puffs included. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bar with these. They're better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere between 2 to 300 calories. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Compare that to a candy bar, which has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. At Built Bar, they're all about taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Second segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen today. For your next listen today, make sure to check out the Locked On Now podcast. It's nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez. I got Jacob Winans here on this episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. So, Jacob, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. So,
Okay.
The Florida Panthers have had 8 back-to-backs this season. What do you think is their record now on the second end of a back-to-back?
That's a tough one. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of some of the back-to-backs. I'm going to go 5-3.
You're close. 4-3-1 on the second end of a back-to-back this season. I was just looking up and down the schedule just out of curiosity to see where they were in the back end of a back-to-back. So now they're 4-3-1, and that speaks a lot of volumes about this team, about where different types of situations that we put this Florida Panthers team in. I mean, a lot of those second ends of a back-to-back include the shootout loss against the Boston Bruins, one of the We Want 10 games in just mid-January, another We Want 10 game, the second end of a back-to-back, the Rangers and Lightning in late December. So a lot of them include like a lot of offensive barrages for the Panthers as well. So the Panthers and the Penguins in this game, this was not a game full of odd man rushes. A lot of teams were playing well in the neutral zone, and a lot of the times the puck was just being moved around and not a lot of chances going the other way. But the Panthers, when it came to that last one to make it 4-2 at the time, the one where it was Verhaeghe off the rush, now his second game in a row with a goal, needed a little bit of confidence to get himself going. But man, using Barkov as a decoy and then getting that to make it 4-2, and make a wish, Jacob, that was at the 11-11 mark of the third period. So were you thinking of this 2-game stretch for Carter Verhaeghe?
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing everything right. Just in he went on a stretch where he had 1 goal in 12 games. He hasn't been doing anything wrong. He's just had horrible luck. A lot of pucks off the post, a lot of miraculous saves by the goalies he's facing. But he's one of those guys where once he gets one, it's all going to come in waves. I thought his goal tonight was brilliant. You just have to, as Panther fans, we kind of get on the team a lot about the overpassing here and there, but Verhaeghe didn't even look like he was going to pass to Barkov. It's just the defenseman has to have so much respect for Barkov's shot that it gives Verhaeghe the time to shoot, and he didn't waste the chance. If you take it all the way back to opening night against this same team, that goal from Verhaeghe was literally identical to the game winner in overtime against Pittsburgh on opening night. Put it in the same place against the same goalie, shot it from the same spot, and he did it twice. So it was good to see that. And yeah, like you said, these games against the Penguins have not been super high chance, odd man rush type games. Tonight definitely wasn't, but they match up well against each other. Everything has been really close. We've seen two go, one to overtime, one to shootout, and this one came right down to the final minutes. So 1-goal games every time. It's been really tight against the Penguins this year.
One thing that Verhaeghe goal on both games had in common is Sergei Bobrovsky stepping up beforehand. The Penguins in the first matchup, they had 40 plus shots on goal. In their first matchup, Sergei Bobrovsky was just amazing that night. Doing it again tonight, 32 of 35. The Penguins, after the first period, were really dominating possession really the rest of the way for this game. I mean, just listing the shot on goals, 15-9 in the second period, 11-7 in the third period. Got 2 goals in 19 seconds. Brian Russ had a great game. He forces Mackenzie Weegar out to feed Zach Aston Reese right in front of the net. Sidney Crosby wins a draw. Jake Gensel gets a shot, and Brian Rust, once again, he doesn't get an assist, but he screens Sergei Bobrovsky, and he can't see it at all. So, but again, credit to Sergei Bobrovsky. He held it down when he needed to. That Verhaeghe goal going the other way. The only difference, Jacob, was it was Casey DeSmith starting on opening night.
Right.
That was the only difference on that one, but still very similar to what happened on opening night to create an opportunity at the other end. And there were so many damn chances for the Pittsburgh Penguins to tie this game, but Sergei Bobrovsky kept saying no. And one of those chances, I usually try not to complain about officiating, but let's talk about that penalty on Eetu Luostarinen on that slash on Sidney Crosby. I wanted to pull my non-existent hair out at that time. How about you?
Yeah, that was a Sidney Crosby privilege call. Anyone else in the league gets tapped on the pants with one hand on the stick. That's just not a call that's ever made unless you're Sidney Crosby. Maybe Connor McDavid gets that one. But yeah, that's a really costly call by the ref there at that point in the game. We really saw the Panthers do what we wanted them to do in these type of games, where they sit back, lock it down, wait for a chance. Verhaeghe, they get one chance in the third period. Verhaeghe buries it, and then to have the kind of the perfect strategy, and they're executing it to perfection, and then they're thrown on the penalty kill because the ref decides that he wants to be Sidney Crosby's best friend. It's frustrating, but that was probably the best penalty kill we've had all season, short of a shorthanded goal, because I don't think Pittsburgh got a single shot on that entire power play. No. It was just in and out of the zone right away for a whole 2 minutes.
Barkov and Achari had a shorthanded chance on that PK opportunity. And then Huberdeau on an empty net opportunity. There was a slash there, and he doesn't get called. So
2 slashes because Hornquist got hacked right before.
So it was a lot of close but no cigar type of opportunities for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But let's backtrack a little bit, because the Florida Panthers, their streak of 2 power play goals came to an end. But beggars can't be choosers, Jacob. So the fact that they got a power play goal is just incredible, and it's contributing to their winning streak, even though the first game of that was the loss against Edmonton. But I decided to calculate the numbers over the last 5 games for the Panthers. They're 9 of 22 on the power play, a good 41% for this team, and it's clicking on cylinders. They're doing it with both units. And on that power play goal, puck retrieval was the key in that one. The way the Panthers possess the puck after a shot and keep it in their own zone is incredible. Barkov shoots it. Huberdeau finds Anthony Duclair, and that's Anthony Duclair. That with that goal right there, that ties his career high in goals with 23, tying his previous season high in his final season in Ottawa, the season right before he signed with the Panthers. Bill Zito saw that performance there, and the fact that he's on the first power play unit now, contributing to the play, and now third power play goal in a row in a game in a row. Excuse me, just incredible what Anthony Duclair has been able to contribute to this team after questions earlier this offseason on whether he was going to be exposed to the expansion draft.
Yeah, this season you definitely cannot say enough about Anthony Duclair's performance. We all kind of felt like finally getting a season to start a season with the same team and the same system for a second year in a row is something he hasn't really gotten to do until he found his home here. And getting the opportunity on the first power play, he's making the most of it. 3 games in a row now with the power play goal, which is a really impressive streak. That is not easy to do unless you're Alex Ovechkin or someone who really tears it up from that one-timer spot. That's not what Duclair does. But yeah, it's been impressive. He's been fantastic. And then on the power play, like you said, puck retrieval was big, but it's also just getting shots to the net. They're starting to shoot a little more. And I'd say even though we only scored 1 power play goal tonight, it was probably the most encouraging power play performance I've seen in a little bit, because Pittsburgh is one of those teams that really pressures the point and the puck carrier. And the Panthers have struggled with that in the past, with overpassing and waiting too long to make decisions. And against Pittsburgh, they were moving the puck. Those Pittsburgh forecheckers weren't getting to it, and we were getting opportunities off of that. So that was really encouraging. That's the kind of penalty kill you're going to see in the playoffs. So it was encouraging to see them break that down.
And in this 4-game winning streak, not a single power play goal given up on the other end. So,
right.
And this is without Anton Lundell for the last 2 games, and Noah Chari's back on that first PK unit. The guy who's not afraid to put his body out there. As Tom McLean describes it, he eats pucks. So just an incredible unit that the Florida Panthers continue to go out there. And a lot of the talk about Jonathan Huberdeau's non-existent quote-unquote Hart candidacy is a lot of people talk about his defensive game, but there were many times where I was seeing him break up shots in the slot and creating opportunities going the other way. And I think that the national media needs to cut Jonathan Huberdeau a little bit of slack because of the fact that this is his first season that he's consistently on the penalty kill. I mean, if they want to watch Jonathan Huberdeau in the last few games on the PK to really see a chance for him to be in the Hart race, they need to watch these last few games with Jonathan Huberdeau on the penalty kill.
Yeah, definitely. Huberdeau, you could kind of see it. You could see it brewing a little bit in the playoffs last year. He really took his game to another level in that series against Tampa. He was checking hard and he was playing defense like we hadn't seen him play before. And when the Panthers lost, you could see just on his facial expression, he was really, really struggling with that loss. And it just seemed to motivate him a lot defensively. This year, he's taken on a bigger role as a leader of the team with the penalty kill. And you see him forecheck. You see him whenever there's an injury or someone's in the penalty box. You've seen Lomberg get a couple fighting majors. Huberdeau is the first guy to step up and take that extra shift on the fourth line, and he'll switch his entire game and just become a grinder for that shift. And that is something we haven't seen from Huberdeau in the past. And if the Hart voters aren't paying attention to that, then I mean, there's not really much else you can say until they win a Stanley Cup, and he demands the attention because his game has really evolved this year.
Igor Shesterkin though is making a big case though.
For sure, you got to think he has the Vezina in the bag, so the Hart Trophy would not be out of the question.
Yeah, so he's definitely making a case, and I'm not gonna discredit the season that Igor Shesterkin is having. I mean, the Florida Panthers have had a hard time with Igor this season as well, and thank God they don't play the Rangers again. I mean, the Florida Panthers continue 29-0-0 after a lead in after the second period. Just continues to be perfect on the PK and another power play goal. So a lot of credit on all three zones, the special teams unit for the Florida Panthers. But man, they come back home for one against Philly, final game of their 3-game series after winning the first two, and then it's off to the West Coast for this Florida Panthers team. But we're going to take a break. We're going to discuss the state of the Atlantic Division, the NHL, and kind of look forward to Thursday's matchup against the Philadelphia Flyers. So we'll be back on this episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Jacob Winans here from PantherParkway.com on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So, Jacob, looking around the NHL, I mean, I just mentioned Igor Shesterkin. Actually, he did not start tonight against Minnesota Wild, and they scored 5 goals. So I was about to say he's made his case for the Hart. So I guess giving up 5 goals to the Minnesota Wild, winning 5-2 makes maybe an extra case for his Hart candidacy. So I wish I had a good argument for Jonathan Huberdeau if Igor were in net. But let's check about other scores. The Florida Panthers have taken the lead now in the Atlantic Division. I just checked the score right now, and the Winnipeg Jets have defeated the Tampa Bay Lightning by a final score of 7-4. It was just looking at the box score alone, 6 goals combined by both teams in the first period. They go a scoreless second period, and then it's off to the races for Winnipeg. So division lead now for the Florida Panthers. The race is on. Nashville defeats Dallas 2-1. Ottawa defeats the St. Louis Blues 4-1. Arizona defeats Detroit 9-2. Maple Leafs win over the Kraken. Let's talk about that Kraken Maple Leafs game. There was a Florida Panthers representative at that game in Toronto between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Seattle Kraken. You got to think they're looking at Mark Giordano in this game, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I would have to think the Panthers rep there is there to scout Mark Giordano. That was a game I was interested in keeping an eye on tonight, aside from Tampa's game, because the Kraken are not really a good team, but they really gave Toronto all they could handle, and Toronto just ended up simply outscoring them. But defensively, Toronto has some major issues. Their goalie problems are apparent. And yeah, I would have to think the Panthers were there to scout Mark Giordano, and that seems to be gaining some traction. The fact that Seattle is likely to move him, they've started to give out extensions to certain guys now, and Giordano is not one of them. So you'd have to believe they're going to trade their captain. He just celebrated his 1,000th game, but got to think they're going to trade him. And the Panthers are in the market for a left shot defenseman with playoff experience. So I think he's a guy we could target. But yeah, definitely that Panthers rep was most likely there for him. And then also on the topic of the Kraken, quick shout out to Jared McCann today, securing
Yes.
5-year, $5 million, 5x5 this year. Former Panther, and he was a guy I really enjoyed getting to know a bit when he was here. He's a great dude, so congrats to him on that big contract extension.
And that trade at the time, along with Nick Bjugstad to the Pittsburgh Penguins, really helped the Panthers clear up their cap space for that offseason to sign a Sergei Bobrovsky. So trading for expiring contracts at the time. So worked out for his career, exposing the expansion draft by Toronto, found a home, gets an extension. So congrats to him. More scores around the league. The New Jersey Devils defeat the Colorado Avalanche 5-3. So even the President's Trophy is still on for the Florida Panthers, even though a lot of people, including Nick Fairbanks, talks about how he doesn't want the President's Trophy.
I don't want it. It's a curse.
So it's a curse. So I understand. Right now, Washington and Calgary are tied at 2 at the end of the second. Chicago's up big against Anaheim 8-3 as of this recording, with 3 minutes left in the third. But let's talk about this final game of the night. Well, not final game of the night, but final game that we're mentioning. The Flyers defeat the Vegas Golden Knights by a final score of 2-1. Carter Hart comes up with 47 saves against the Vegas Golden Knights. They're struggling a little bit. Mark Stone is on LTIR. But why are we mentioning it in this last? Of course, that's their next matchup at home before they hit the road. But there was some Panthers representatives at a Charlotte Checkers game against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms the other day, and you gotta think that the Flyers scouts who attended that game, this is the time where a lot of scouts come to games. There's a lot of, this is a time where we get to kind of speculate more and more, which kind of makes this fun too, Jacob. So got to think that they're looking at an Owen Tippett in this case, or maybe even Grigory Denisenko.
Yeah, so we all obviously heard the reports that Philly had several scouts in attendance for the back-to-back between Charlotte and Lehigh Valley. Owen Tippett came up with, if I'm not mistaken, had 3 points over those two games. The Checkers won both of those two games, and Tippett played really well. Found the score sheet in goals twice and had a couple of assists, I believe. So maybe 3 or 4 points in those two games on the back-to-back. Got to think the Philly scouts were impressed by that. Shortly after that report came out, there was also reported by, I can't remember which reporter, but I know it was Sportsnet reported that the Panthers did have an offer made for Claude Giroux of the Flyers. There was an offer made. We don't know what that package included, but the general belief is that Owen Tippett was involved in that. So it'll be interesting to see if anything comes of that after Thursday's game. Obviously, nothing would happen before that. I wouldn't think, but after Thursday's game, it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. If we have an offer already on the table, and so that adds some intrigue to that Thursday matchup for sure.
I want to requote you on something, Jacob.
What's up?
He's too good for the AHL.
Yes.
He 10 points in 8 games. Just the reports for what Philly was demanding is an NHL ready player. So there it is for the Philadelphia Flyers. This is a team that's trying to rebuild. We don't know if they're going to keep a player like Rasmus Ristolainen, who they gave up a lot for as well. So that's a big question mark for them as well. And they're just in a little bit of a limbo themselves as a franchise. So that's going to be interesting to see. And I think win or loss, that's going to be, I think the biggest storyline of that game is just going to come to what these management groups are going to do when they in person in Sunrise, Florida,
Right,
behind closed doors over just chatting on the phone the last few days. So it's going to be interesting to see, even though we can't see the behind the scenes ourselves. It's something to wonder what that conversation is going to look like in person versus over the phone.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that these negotiations are happening. A lot of times you see things really gain traction as far as trade talks and roster moves after an in-person meeting. And yeah, these GMs are gonna meet and they're gonna talk, and it's gonna happen at the game. I'm sure the Panthers will be closely watching Claude Giroux and seeing where he might fit best if he were to be a Panther. And I think that'll just be a really interesting matchup, and I hope the Panthers come ready for it and don't let any of the outside talk about trades affect the performance on the ice. Carter Hart is obviously hot right now. 47 saves tonight is unreal. So I'd assume he gets the start again. So Panthers need to focus on business, just win the game, and the front office will work out everything else. So it'll be interesting to see if any of these trades end up happening and Claude Giroux maybe becoming a Flyer or becoming a Panther sometime after that Thursday game. We'll have to wait and see.
Probably not shortly after, because I think they want to get Claude Giroux his 1,000th game first, and then
Right.
possibly a trade. So that was something that I've read online. So it'll probably be somewhere shortly before, shortly after that 1,000th game. So
Right.
don't be surprised if it's that next day if it does happen. So lots of things to. I have my devious hands like going like, ooh, like we start to wonder what's going to go on, and of course that's going to be a topic of conversation.
It's fun to be a buyer, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is. We're not used to that, that's for sure. So once again, Jacob, thank you for joining me on this episode of Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. If you want to follow Jacob online, you can follow him at Jacob Winans8 on Twitter, and of course every Wednesday he'll be on the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So Jacob, thank you once again for joining the show.
Definitely. We got some late ones next week, so that should be good.
Can't wait, my dude, and we'll definitely be chatting then.
For sure.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On NHL and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark, who will be covering all the regular season activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Hosts Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone help you become the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.